Okay, so I think the recording has started, so we can start officially. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this Metabolomics Society podcast. Let me just introduce this series with this introductory slide, where this is actually the first occasion where Metabolomics Society cooperates with the early career members network for this podcast. So in this podcast series, we will focus on mentoring. And we title this podcast Mentorship Across Borders, which implies, and we're trying to imply that we have many panelists and many experts from different parts of the world. And we wanted to make this selection quite diverse. So we will have opinions and insights from many people or from these people from many different parts of the world. And I will just quickly introduce myself. My name is Aleš Kvasnička. I'm currently a researcher in Oslo University Hospital in Norway. And I'm interested in clinical applications of metabolomics and lipidomics and various diseases and applications. So that will be just very short from me, and then my colleague moderator Monique can give us a few words for introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Monique Ryan. I'm one of the early career members from the EMN network, and I am situated in Western Australia at the Australian National Phenome Centre, and I'm a postdoctoral research that's looking into lipidomic changes after childhood burn injury.
Perfect. So next, we have our wonderful panelists, and I will just ask them to introduce themselves one by one, and I will just call out this order by what I see here on Zoom. So please, Natasha, can you start?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Yellerow. I am a metabolomic scientist with Metabolon. I've been in my role for 2 years now, and in my role, I sort of provide scientific support and advice for metabolomics applications in biopharma as well as academia, and also contribute to the R&D efforts of the company. Prior to that, I was, of course, in academia for quite a few years, and I'm also currently on the board of directors of the Metabolomics Society and very sort of heavily involved with the early members network committee as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So next we have Anna.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna. I'm German, but I've been living in Singapore for the past 20 years. I moved here on a 2 years contract and stayed. And I helped establish the Singapore Lipidomics Incubator, which is a research program at the National University of Singapore. And my primary interest is clinical translation, primarily of lipidomic assays, or basically anything that could have an application outside of the lab. And I'm also a co-founder of FEMS, the Female Mass. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So then we have Ian. We cannot hear you, Ian.
Sorry, the technology is eating me. Okay. I'm Ian Castro Gamboa, and I'm a professor at the Institute of Chemistry of São Paulo State University in Brazil. I was born in Costa Rica, and my background is natural product chemistry. And it was during an interchange, a scholarly interchange at Art Edison lab that I got in love with metabolomics. It was the birth of metabolomics, and there was always a question in my head about synergy of molecules and how to explain that in the natural product world. So I started into this endeavor and adventure, but I'm purely in academia, and it's a privilege to be here amongst you guys.
Okay, thanks so much. So next one will be Caroline.
Hey everybody, my name is Caroline Johnson, and I am an associate professor at Yale School of Public Health in Connecticut in the United States. I've opened my lab back in 2016, and we specialize in using untargeted mass spectrometry-based metabolomics to understand sex-related differences in metabolism, primarily in the area of colorectal cancer, and trying to understand as well how environmental exposures can affect the prognosis of individuals. I'm originally from England, and I did all my training there. So I did my PhD at Imperial College in London, and then I did postdoctoral work in the government at the National Cancer Institute in Maryland. And then I was a staff scientist at Scripps Research Institute in California. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks so much. And last but not least, we have Nick.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Nick Rattray. I am an associate professor in clinical metabolism in the University of Strathclyde, that is in Glasgow, which is in Scotland. And my metabolomics journey started, I suppose, just after I got my PhD, which was from the School of Pharmacy at the University of Manchester. I was lucky enough to start in Roy Goodacre's lab as a technician, starting in a little bit of an exotic area of metabolomics in breath metabolism, which is super interesting but quite difficult to do, for want of a better description. I did that for a year. And then I kind of got into more sort of aspects of aging and frailty, and that's kind of the research that I focus on now, trying to develop biomarkers for that. I then left Manchester and went to a world-leading lab at the University of Yale, which is Caroline's lab, for a couple of years. I was there for 2 years and then started my own group here about 6 years ago, and it's nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. I will just maybe also mention that Nick is the chair of the Educational Training Committee of the Metabolomics Society. So that's why also this podcast is nicely joined with the EMN being moderators. And I hope we will keep the quality, and Nick will be happy about the results from this.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, I suppose one other thing was I was one of the first members of the EMN as well for the committee when it first set off. And it's amazing to see what you guys are doing, to see how it's sort of progressed over the last few years. It's great.
Thank you so much. So without further ado, we will jump into it. I will just maybe say that we have a lot of attendees. There are over 100 registrations, and they keep growing. So there will be a lot of people here, and they can, of course, ask our esteemed panelists what comes to their mind. So feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A, and then once we will go through some of the initial questions, we will jump to your questions too. So that is the way to how you can also ask. And I will start and maybe kick off this podcast with one topic or one question, and that will be coming back to your early career years or early career stage, where I wanted to kind of somehow see the mentee's point of view, how maybe the mentorship, how do you see the mentorship in your early careers? How did it help you grow and achieve your goals? And when I also seen, once we advertised this podcast, I see this repost from Anna actually, and she mentioned that she wished that she would reach out to mentors early in her career. So that was kind of my understanding that maybe she wants to say something on this. So if I can ask you, Anna, what did you maybe mean by this, or what are your insights in this?
Yeah. So I posted that because I keep thinking that it would have been very helpful to reach out to mentors earlier in my career. When I started to think about it, prompted by Christina's comment that mentorship maybe wasn't that much of a concept back then, I started asking all sorts of people, and nobody I asked, apart from one person, said they actually had mentors. And then I started thinking, was I totally blur, or was it because it really was maybe that common? And everyone said, well, actually, we didn't really know that this concept of mentorship exists, and there were no formal mentorship programs. And if you were lucky, then there was someone who took you under their wings, but it wasn't really a thing. And I know that I didn't reach out to mentors because I always felt awkward then about bothering someone, asking all sorts of questions. So that was what stood in my way when I needed help back then.
So do you see that the situation? Yeah. So do you see the situation is changing? You also mentioned that you are the co-founder of the Females in MS. So maybe in this respect, you have also some initiatives, right? I think.
I think the situation has totally changed, and now there are formal mentorship programs through a variety of societies, and also through the universities and through the different networks we founded. So, for example, for FEMS, Females and Mass Spec, there's a mentorship program, and people can sign up. And I signed up as a mentee, just that nobody accepted that, and I was turned into a mentor. But I think these days it's quite different, and I think it helps to have a formal mentorship program because it's easier to manage expectations and clearly communicate if there is some sort of a framework behind.
Thank you. Are there any other insights into this question, how mentorship can be very important? Okay, Ian is raising their hands up, yeah.
I had an opposite situation. You know, I was very lucky. I think there's a kind of a luck there to have mentors, fantastic mentors during my career, you know, and inspiring people. I think that the mentorship must come with an inspiring situation, not only on the scientific object, but also on the philosophical one. So I had the privilege to have two women. One was my advisor, my PhD advisor, that she just gave wings to my dreams, let me just do the things that I did on my PhD without, she believed in my thoughts. It was fantastic. And then with the postdoc that it was in this institution, also another fantastic female that said to me, okay, go for it. I was working with electrochemical compounds after working with just purely natural product chemistry, and she allowed me to do all these different things with HPLC, mass spectrometry. It was kind of a novel thing back in 2000, you know. So it was great. I really, and this is also important, you know why? Because you learn to behave. So I try to do the same with my students. If they got a great idea, I just told them, just go for it, and I'll be here if you need anything. So it's another, you know, another side of the thing, you know.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sorry.
Yes, of course.
That it can be a truly empowering relationship. You gain so much confidence by having someone who you know is always going to have your back, and it can of course be go beyond the relationship that you have with your current PhD supervisor or postdoc, PI, etc. My experience is similar to Anne's. I can't say I've had tremendous sort of experience with mentors, but through this kind of relationships, I think you can learn a lot and navigate challenges, as I said, with a lot more confidence and clarity.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I say, sorry, go on, Caroline. After you, Caroline, I'll go after you. Go on.
Just, yeah, really quick. Yeah, I also didn't really have a lot of mentorship very early on, even like an undergrad, you know, level. And it would have been really valuable for me to have, I think, more career guidance and direction and things like that. I was a little bit lost, and even things like preparing to do a poster presentation at a conference, you know, like just that sort of, not just the technical knowledge, but just these other aspects of, you know, career development and professional development are like so important. So and yeah, now there are more mentorship programs, right? So even like at faculty level, you know, we are given, you know, mentors until we get through to more independence. So I think it goes the whole gamut from very early career all the way through, and I still have mentors, unofficial ones. So yeah, sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Caroline. I kind of fall in the same bracket as maybe Anne and Caroline, where I didn't have a defined mentor pretty much until I reached faculty level. And I think I definitely think I would have benefited from it. I mean, I think I did get mentored advice from networks, colleagues, postdocs, professors, but that was always a bit sporadic. And you know, you kind of absorbed these bits, as you said there, Caroline, about designing a poster, how to present properly. All of these things were kind of done by diffusion, by learning by the mistakes of others, by all those sorts of things. You kind of picked those up as you went along. But I can totally see the advantage of having somebody where you've got this more formal relationship, but hopefully informal conversations that you will have with somebody that will help guide you through that. I could totally see the value of that, and obviously that is the main reason why we get these mentorship programs and why these have been the thing that have come forward over the last 5 years, something like that. I would say 5 or 6 years. There's been a lot more that have come up. So yeah, there's huge value in that.
Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, of course.
So how do we define mentors? Because so I clearly had really invested supervisors and had people in my lab, either peers and also supervisors, who were really there to provide guidance on all those technical matters in the really scientific direction. And that's not necessarily what I would define as a mentor. So for me, what I mean with a mentor is more people outside of the lab and outside of your line of reporting, in a way, like the people who are not on your paper, like the others who help you navigate all those things that that are not scientific in a way, like the people management, the politics. How do you navigate with negative feedback? How do you do the poster presentation? How do you apply for a travel award? Those things, the non-scientific things, perhaps. Yeah.
If anybody wants to react to that, how we define a mentor?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I think from my perspective now, I've probably got 4 or 5 mentors, and I have them in different areas of my career. You know, I have one that will mentor me on the academic side, one on the more clinical side, one on the business spin out sort of key side of things as well. And I think it is important that you have that sort of, you know, you don't just have to have one person that you fall back on to try to give you advice. I suppose that was maybe my point before, is the fact that my mentoring previously wasn't defined. It wasn't official by any stretch of the imagination. Now it very much is. Now it's very much more, I suppose, a little bit more prescriptive, I suppose it would be. And I totally get Anne's point about sort of mentorship. Probably the best mentoring advice I've had have been from individuals that are not in my direct line of sight, they don't really know my area of research at all. They're people that are completely out with the stuff that I do. I think they can tend to view your development as a more holistic sort of type of thing, rather than going to the maybe details of the science and stuff that you do, which I think is quite important, that bigger viewpoint.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And we are kind of moving now from the first question about mentees and this early career view, how it helps to reach the later stages and to reach your goals, to these questions like what is a mentor? And I think that all of our great panelists could be titled the mentors. And so I will actually ask you if you see yourselves as mentors, maybe how many people you are mentoring right now, and can you give us maybe some tips how to make this mentee-mentor relationship supportive, productive, and maybe ensuring that both parties are benefiting from it? And I leave this open. Who is the first to grab this question? It's completely fine.
Question. Well, let me start with it, because this is a, at least from my point of view, is a challenge, you know. And for example, if I remember when I started in the faculty, having my masters and my PhDs, you are closer in generational time. You're younger, so you allow yourself to have more contact with these persons. So it's beautiful, and you go out and have a beer and whatever. Yeah. So this also is important, because you discuss science. This is something like we like to do in Brazil. We discuss a lot of science when we go out, and we take a little, you know, napkin and write about the ideas, drinking caipirinhas or drinking beer. So this is good. But then time passes, and the people that comes to, you know, to do PhD or masters, they're still in the same age, you know, and you are getting older. So this is in my point of view, is a challenge, because there are a lot of incompatibilities sometimes from the generations. There is a fragility nowadays that I perceive in these new generations, and this is not something bad. I mean, this is a challenge for if someone looks for you to do a PhD, there is not only the scientific. This is what I think. This is not only just science, you know, strict science and the project and where are you going to go, which conference you're going to go, or there's something else. After all, it's a philosophy doctorate. It's philosophy there. So you have to expand this network, not only just dedicated to science. You have to talk about other things, about literature, about what you think about the politics, not only scientific politics, but also politics of the world, what is happening into the world. I mean, it is very challenging for me. It's every year that passes is a new challenges that open up, but it's a beautiful challenge. I think I'm totally, you know, I believe that from my heart.
Thank you so much, Ian. This is quite a very broad definition of a mentor and the topics that you can discuss and talk about. Have some other opinions maybe, or other views?
Personally, I'm not actively engaged in structured one-on-one mentoring relationships, probably because of my, I guess, position in industry and the short amount of time I've been in this space. But I just contribute to this space either by maintaining relationships with the students I supervised during my time in academia, or by engaging in all sorts of activities within the metabolomics community. But I guess regarding tips about how to nurture that relationship, I think just being genuinely interested and curious about each other's perspectives really, really helps. I think, as we mentioned in the backstage, it's a two-way relationship, and we definitely have a lot to learn from each other. And also just try and build, through obviously actions, just build trust and showing up for your mentee whenever it's needed, either to navigate challenges again or to celebrate their successes.
Yeah, I also see Caroline was raising her hand, I think, before.
Yeah, hi. So at the moment, yeah, I mentor 2 PhD students, 2 postdocs, and also a junior faculty member in my lab. And so, of course, everyone is at very different career stages, and people have different obligations as well. Some are caregivers and have families and things like that. So I try to make my mentoring a little bit more individualized to like each person, because they all have, you know, different career aspirations as well. And I try to make it a little bit give them a lot of independence, I guess I'd say, in the lab, because I think also, you know, work-life balance is really important. I think you need to be happy and feel motivated in what you're doing, and not feel like you're there just, you know, as a worker, you know, you've got to get these like papers done and samples run and things like that. I think it's important to generate a love of what you're doing, especially in, you know, academia as well, where it's not just like the research, it's also the teaching and the mentoring and everything like that. So most of the individuals in my lab have wanted to go on to academic positions, so we try to give them various experiences, such as, you know, opportunities to review papers and go to conferences and network and things like that. So I think mentoring is very complex. I think it's not just like, you know, technical knowledge. I think it's these other things, like Anna said, like it's all these other aspects which perhaps you're not trained as well as a mentor to know about and deliver as you become a mentor. And I think it does, you know, you sort of learn how to do these almost as acquire these skills to get to impart to others as you go along. So yeah, that's my philosophy, I guess.
Thank you so much.
I-
Is there any more tips?
Yeah, I think what for me makes for the most productive mentor-mentee relationships is when the mentees have a clear ask, like when they really clearly communicate what they need from you and reach out and clearly ask if they're looking for advice or for a pep talk or for being talked out of an idea, like what is it that they need from you right now, and then follow up. So once you've had that interaction, then if later on they follow up and give you an update on how that helped or didn't help, and continue to check in on that. It's always a bit boring as a mentor, I think, if someone reaches out. I don't know how you see that, but in your relationship with mentees, if you invest time and, you know, heart, blood, and everything into mentoring someone, and then that person kind of disappears, and it's a bit unclear how all of that energy you invested, if that was actually helpful or not. So I think that's quite important to continue being in a dialogue with clear communication.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
I totally agree with Anne as well. I think as an academic, I think the further up the sort of slippery pole that we climb as academics, the more valuable our time is. Everybody's time is critical. Actually, that's the resource that we've got the least of usually, is time. So going into these sort of mentorship meetings, if there is a clear defined goal that we're working towards, that we can help and contribute towards, I agree that usually makes it more effective and ultimately means stuff will happen quicker, and the fact that we can give advice and or give sort of opinion and help sooner and more efficiently. Sorry to kind of break it down as a more, almost like a more technical aspect to it, but I definitely think there is a lot of value in going in with clear defined goals as to what you want to achieve and what you want to get out of it. Because if you don't, as you said, you can spend a lot of time just sort of giving advice, but it might not be the best advice that they're going to receive to be able to get to the bottom of the not the problem or the thing you want to achieve at the end of it.
Okay, thanks a lot for all these inputs. I will just once more mention for the attendees that they can pop their questions into the Q&A if they have any questions. We already have some questions popping up, but we will leave those for a little bit later. I would just move on, but not so much, because you all shared very valuable insights into the tips for mentoring. And still, I wanted to show the situation as I finished my PhD recently, and now I'm starting as a neuro as a early scientist, a researcher, and now I'm supposed to mentor more students, or also establishing this more from the point of view of a mentor, as I should be in this role. And do you have some maybe other tips on this transition from this mentee to mentor, or this from early career to later career, maybe how to establish some boundaries or these goals, as you were talking about, how some tips on this in this regard? If anybody wants to add anything, or you can also use this raise hand thing, or just raise your hand, or just jump in.
What I used to do is when someone would email me or text or whatever to ask for my time, I would say, okay, sure, but what is it exactly that you want to discuss? To make that person do the homework first and really think about what is the ask. I'm coming back to like, what is the ask? So the person already starts thinking about it. And then also then I have a bit of time to think about that as well. And then the whole thing can be like a lot of substantial things can happen in 7 minutes, right? If it's well prepared. If there's trust. Yeah. But it needs to, yeah, basically preparation.
Okay, thanks a lot. Ian?
That's why it's so difficult. That's why it is so challenging, you know, because we're dealing with a human being, you know, and we're very complex. Sometimes there is a student that want to talk to you about something, and sometimes you have all the things in your head and you don't have an agenda. And that's why it's so complicated. But I agree with Anne, and this is something I've done in the past 5 years. Whenever there is a demand of a student to ask for something, I will just, you know, tell him tell her, what do we want? What do you want to talk about? So I have a little bit of time to brew the thing, you know, to devise anything. So it's better. Sometimes it is very complex because you are dealing with human beings. This is the beauty of it, but it's very challenging, as I said before.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's as everyone said, it's about time management, right? So I think that's the issue. I think if you feel like you don't have time, or you're spending too much time mentoring and you feel stressed out by that, then that's not a good, you know, peer-to-peer mentoring relationship. So you would need to talk to your mentor, like your advisor, and say, oh, hi, you know, can maybe some of the mentoring be shared with another person, or I'm not able to spend, you know, 5 hours a week or whatever it is, like, you know, mentoring this person would be a lot. But I think, you know, it's also, there's different levels of that, like to communicate that with your mentor and what you're comfortable with. So we have a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring in my lab too, and we have students coming in and out for like summer rotations and things like that. But and some are, you know, really want to work with, you know, individuals who are more early career level. But I do check in quite a bit to say, are you okay with this? Are you feeling stressed out? Like, is this too much? You know, so I think there's that aspect of going up to your mentor as well and checking with them. So
yeah, so I actually wanted to slowly transition to the next question, but what you said, Caroline, was very interesting to me. So it seems you have really good like structure in your lab, kind of for this mentoring setup
hope
or
so.
structure, let's say, because that was sound very interesting. I've never experienced this in like other labs. Maybe maybe it's common. I don't know, but can you maybe say something more about this? How do you maybe
I
lead
think
this into
because
it? Or?
we have quite a large number of individuals in the lab, so I try not to take too many individuals because then it's hard for me to mentor each person myself. So, you know, I've worked in labs where there's like 10 postdocs, and then it's impossible to really get any time with your mentor, and it is all peer-to-peer mentoring then, and no mentoring at all upper levels. So yeah, we just, you know, we have people in the lab for short periods of time, and some of the, you know, more technical knowledge of people who are working in the lab, you know, is imparted there. And then you know, from my side, we have like you know, more sort of some scientific mentoring, but also from the career development side as well. So it's kind of a mixture of things. But yeah, so I think peer-to-peer mentoring is very important as well, because I think, as Ian said, like you know, I think you're also at like similar generations as well, and you know, sort of I think it's helpful for early career individuals to get advice from each other and learn how to navigate things as well. So but yeah, that's just how the structure is in my lab. But I always worked in institutes before in the government, so I didn't really have any academic mentoring experience actually until moving into my current position. So we
Caroline?
didn't have students and things. So hi.
Caroline, for the peer-to-peer mentorship, are those sort of organically grown, like self-organized, or was there some matchmaking behind?
There is some matchmaking based on scientific interests. So actually, each person in my lab has their own sort of defined projects. So some people are working on understanding environmental exposures in cancer. Some people are doing more bioinformatic work. Some individuals are doing more wet lab, like immunohistochemistry and, you know, Western blots and things like that. So it just depends actually on the interests of the individuals coming in, and also the willingness of, you know, a postdoc or a PhD student to work with another individual and their time as well. So, and people have things going on. So some, you know, are working on, you know, writing, you know, grants and things like that, and they don't have time, or, you know, they're involved in some other aspects. So, yeah. Or maybe Nick can comment on that because he was in my lab for the initial stages. But yeah, when we set up for the first 2 years, it was very, I think Nick was the only lab member for a while. But yeah.
Did that mean I mentored myself, Caroline? Is that what happened there? Sorry, that was a bit cheeky. I mean, I think I'll maybe talk about my lab first at the moment. I think there's a little bit of a distinction, I suppose, that I've got in my head about mentoring, where I've got mentoring my own group, which I suppose is quite different because you're seeing all of those members on a daily basis. Pretty much, I'll probably speak to most of my group, not daily, every couple of days we'll be speaking. And I think that mentorship can be almost innate, where it happens organically, where you point out opportunities for conferences, for talks, for writing grants, and all that stuff just happens, you know, naturally in the format that we've got. And then I do mentor three other postdocs with my department in the university, and they're quite different. I think they're quite different conversations, where it might be every 3 months we meet up, every 2 months, something like that. We'll sit for a couple of hours, we'll have a coffee, we'll talk about long-term career aspirations of, you know, right, I want to be an academic, how do I do it? Well, you need, what are your papers, what are your grants? You know, those sorts of questions, we kind of maybe have more focused on that. So I think it really does depend on the relationship, I suppose the ongoing relationship you've got with those individuals can really define, I suppose, that mentorship that we've had. Very much like you said there, Caroline, you know, with my group, because we've got that really, you know, daily contact. I think it makes quite a different way in which you can maybe approach it. The end result's the same, hopefully, in the fact that you help everybody get better, you know, make themselves better, gives them agency in their own direction of where they go in their career and all of those things. But I think the approach, depending on the amount of, going back to that point of time, and the amount of time you can give somebody, can really kind of change the way in which you might approach it. Hope I'm making sense by saying that. Hope so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for these very valuable inputs. Very interesting. I think I will pass the baton to Monique, and she can maybe continue with her next question.
Yeah, so I wanted to change the perspective a little bit. Something that kind of commonly happens with people early, mid, late career as well is a transition between academia and industry. And we have some representatives from academia and industry here. So I kind of wanted to direct this question to begin with to Natasha. I know you've only been in industry for a little bit, but what kind of needs and expectations actually do you think differ between industry and academia? And was this a sudden shift for you as well, considering you've moved between the two?
Absolutely. It's definitely not comparing apples to apples here. I'd say in academia, obviously, mentorship is mostly centered around research and building the mentee's scientific independence and sort of help them find their own voice, etc. Whereas in industry, it's a whole different ballgame, if I'm honest. Mentorship here, or having a mentor, really leans towards, or it means having more exposure or more experience with practical and soft skill development. You really need someone to support you to navigate the corporate culture, someone to sort of take your hand and guide you through the corporate game, the organizational politics, and how you actually adapt to it all, and how in a short amount of time. And all these things can feel very alien to someone that transitions from academia. So it's super important to find a mentor that can help you with these challenges effectively. And also, probably in contrast to academia, this also varies massively to depending on the geography of the company that you work for. So American corporate mentality is, of course, dramatically different from the mentality in Europe or Asia. So it's really important that you choose a mentor, find a mentor with a relevant background. So what I'm sort of looking for as a mentee at this stage is for advice on how to, you know, more effectively work in cross-functional teams. Like we speak to sales, marketing, product, R&D, etc. So you really need to learn the language and communicate your science in simple terms very often in order to meet the objectives of the business and ultimately generate the revenue that's going to push the business forward. So you really need those skills in project management, communication, etc. So having someone that can recognize the value of developing the skills and help you achieve them is super important. And another sort of challenge that I've faced is how to balance your very deep sort of technical expertise with the business and strategic thinking. So in industry, you're not just a scientist, you're part of a business that prioritizes efficiency, results, as opposed to maybe more sort of open-ended projects in academia. So again, really important to find someone that can help you align your scientific expertise with the business. And something that I think it's super interesting and very important and that we don't talk about enough is how to cope with your loss of academic status, if that makes sense. A lot of people that transition from academia to industry struggle to let go of the traditional academic path. Personally, for the longest time while I was in academia, I was like convinced I was going to be a lecturer and professor, etc. And also the idea, so the performance indicators in academia are so different. You're going to publish in a high impact journal, you're going to get that next big grant. Those are the markers of success there, and those are very different in industry. So that's something that I struggled with quite a bit, especially after that initial enthusiasm sort of quiets down, if you like, after finding that job in industry that you wanted so much. So having a mentor that can give you the perspective that you need of what success looks like in industry or in the corporate world can show you how it can be as fulfilling as an academic career is, for example. But ultimately, while the needs are different, I would say the core and the purpose of mentorship remains the same. That is to obviously support someone's career.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really quite a unique perspective, especially for coming from us from academia. How about the others? Does anyone have any comments about their expectations in mentorship in academia, or has anyone had some a little bit of industry experience when it comes to mentorship? Nick,
I'd like
yeah.
to sort of resonate with one of Natasha's points there, and I suppose it's about navigating internal politics, because I think that is a big thing that mentoring can really, really help with when you start in your junior faculty position or as a starting in an industry or whatever. You know, there is a huge unknown there that you will be opening yourself up to making mistakes, potentially, you know, not necessarily knowing the right mechanisms, or not knowing that there are mechanisms out there to help you through the pathways and through the pathways in your career as well. And I do think I've definitely benefited as an academic, having, I think when I started here as like a junior faculty, I had a professor who I would go and speak to, and he would very much advise me on how to, I suppose, just how to get stuff done, because I think that's what it comes down to. I think in industry, how stuff is done, it tends to be way more efficient than in academia. But I think that whole concept of having somebody to help you navigate those processes, be it academia or industry, I think that's critical. I think it's really, really important that you get somebody to do that when you take that step up into the start of your career. So yeah, I was lucky. I did have somebody to help me with that when in faculty, and I said I'm sure in industry it's just as important to know those routes and know exactly how to do them.
Thanks, Nick. Does anyone else have any comments to that? No? Well, thanks for that, especially for perspective between industry and academia. They are, like you said, apples and oranges, but it is quite good to see that there is some overlap between the two of them. I did want to ask a question which kind of comes to sort of the global theme of this podcast. We are across the world currently and very diverse. So I wanted to ask how mentorship can actually address diversity and inclusion when it comes to mentorship relationships. What potential challenges with this, and how could a mentor adapt their approach to address any of the challenges that occur with diversity and inclusion in terms of mentorship? I'll open this to the floor. You got something you'd like to add, Ian?
This is, okay. This is really a challenge nowadays. I'm repeating the same word ever, but is it true, but I think that now in my mind, I was trying to pick in English a proper word, and it's communication. This is mandatory to communicate. You have to communicate your needs, your differences. Sometimes this is not easy, there's a lot of things, especially if you are the boss of the lab, you have to have like this kind of how can I say it? This kind of sensitivity, this kind of try to I don't know how to say, to detect problems of people that maybe they don't feel okay, but then you have to always wait what is the professional side of it and the personal. It is complicated nowadays. In our university, since it's a public university here, these questions about equal gender equality and openness about many, many things is a mandatory thing. It's already done. It's something that we have some issues here of now that I am the deanship of the university. It's a complication because you have all this panorama, not only for the research part of the university, but also for the undergrad, the undergrad part of the university. So, and there is a limit where you as a human being, because we are talking about mentees and mentorship, but nobody taught us about this. There is not lessons on how to be a mentor or mentee, So there is a limit when you just have to look for, to help with, I don't know, whatever, a professional, if there is a case. But I think it's, again, communication, trying to detect differences. And of course, sometimes you can be open to talk about a certain thing, but sometimes the student is not ready to open up. So this is also another challenge. Sometimes you have a chemistry between these relationships. Sometimes this chemistry does not happen. So this is also a problem, another challenge. So it is. I was talking now with a friend with a WhatsApp, and I said, "Oh, I'm happy that you are hearing this, Monica Cala." And I said, there are so many philosophical questions, and this is the beauty of this podcast, but there is not like a perfect answer. They are very philosophical. They are cultural dependent. I mean, I have here colleagues from many different parts of the world. The cultures are different. From Latin America, there is a different culture, and Brazil too is a different thing. So we have all these nuances. It's communicate, and communicate. That's maybe one of the things that I would, I don't know, advise about this, if I can.
Thank you. And yeah, I do agree that communication is one of the key founders of any mentor or mentee relationship. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to comment or add?
I'd like to share
Yes,
something
sir.
that made me really happy. So
Please do.
from the FEMS, from the mentorship pods in the female math bag. In the previous pod, I was a mentor with someone else, and there were about maybe 12 people assigned to my pod, and 2 of them were men, and it was super nice, and it was really, really interesting to they were also from India, and that made me realize what the value is of randomly putting people together, because I don't think we would have otherwise met, and we would have otherwise realized how much value we can be of each other. But because we were randomly put together in this pod, we were sort of forced to really interact and become mentor mentee and established a connection through that. So initially I thought it's more effective, and if a mentor mentee relationship or peer-to-peer relationship, peer-to-peer mentorship grows organically. That was what I originally thought, but maybe that's not true. And especially for diversity, inclusion, and learning and hearing other voices and really learning something and be stunned by misconceptions and all of those beautiful moments in life, it makes sense, I think, to put together really diverse teams in mentorship pods as well.
Yeah, I guess representation really, really matters in this sort of scenarios. It's really important to see people that you can relate to, or people that can acknowledge and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Nick, Caroline, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that just as others have said, that mentoring does provide this sense of being some connectedness, I guess, and sort of and I think having representation across the board is really important, because it does provide that sense that you belong there, and that and that you can have role models and things like that as well. So yeah, so I think it's very important within the sciences. Yeah.
100% agree. I think as mentors and as mentees, we only benefit by the rich tapestry of humans that are out there and engaging with them, and that's where true innovation and science comes from, by mixing up as much as is practically possible. It's pointless a bunch of middle-aged white guys running everything, right? It's not going to be as good as if we have it where absolutely everybody's involved, everybody's got agency, and all the stuff that we do. And I think from a mentoring perspective, I suppose, thinking about sort of the EDI challenges that science ultimately faces, and they are huge challenges. I think as a mentor, you know, a lot of my mentees, I suppose they come with the same, generally there's the same kind of stuff you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be wanting to deal with career progression, understanding the landscape that's in front of you, and dealing with any potential issues that are usually either scientific or with people that they might be dealing with, people clashes. And I think they're ubiquitous. They cover all nationalities, creeds, colours. It doesn't really matter. I think they're absolutely everywhere. And I think as a mentor, getting, I suppose, the more, it comes back to Caroline's point about doing this stuff for longer, the more you do it, the more time you do it, the more experience you have with it, the more, I suppose, expertise you can draw on to try to advise people in that regard. So I think there's huge sort of improvements that we as a scientific community need to make, but the mentorship programs that the EMN are doing and that the society and stuff are doing in general are a good step towards helping to address stuff like that.
Thank you so much, guys. That has been incredible discussion. Oh, Ian, did you want to say something? No? All good? Sorry. And so we're gonna open the floor to just a couple of questions from the audience. And I think what you've just said, Nick, kind of goes well into one of the questions here, which is that someone from the audience is interested in knowing how you handled the later stages of mentoring, which was letting go and allowing independence. They said in their experience there's a fine line between feeling proud of your mentee's independence and also feeling underappreciated. So yeah, if I open the floor to discussions around that.
Can I start with that one, please?
Yes.
I don't go into mentorship expecting to get anything back. Seeing people succeed is amazing. If you're going into it expecting to get, like, ultimately expecting to get like good karma back or whatever it is, I think you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. The only thing you should really be doing it is for somebody to succeed, and if they succeed and they forget about it, so be it. You observe them from a distance. If they succeed and they pull you into under the wing and you still collaborate and you still do work together and all of these other things, then that's amazing. That's amazing as well. I think it kind of lies in your own conscience what you try to get out of it. I suppose that's my kind of view in it. And I think the later stages, you know, I'm going to refer back to my own research group here. I kind of want everybody out of my group as soon as is practically possible. I want them through their PhD as quick as possible, and then on to a bigger, more successful lab, doing more fantastic science somewhere else. And I think it's good to obviously keep a core group together, but I think it's really good to get people out there to experience as much as practically possible that's out there. So I think holding on to people, if mentees or group members or whatever, I suppose it's maybe a mindset that some groups have, but I definitely don't have that mindset at all. It's very much more about getting them through, getting the papers and getting them on to the next step that they're going to do.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly there with Nick as well. It's about like trying to have somebody in your lab and have them to be successful, you know, to understand what they want for their career goals and to get them through that point, and up to that point, you know, do they need more teaching experience? Do they need, you know, grants? Do they need to write papers, or, you know, do they want to achieve something else in the lab? So it's very satisfying, and when that individual obtains independence in an independent position. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I will dare to say, I mean, I agree with the colleagues. This is something that makes you extremely happy, you know, when you see a person that grew in your lab and then suddenly they fly away from the nest. This is great. This is fantastic. And I also dare to say that you wish for those people not only to be successful, but also to be happy. This is a complication. Sometimes successful does not come in hands with happiness. But I mean, happiness is important. It is important for us human beings to feel happy, you know, because you can irradiate this positivity in another things of your life. But this is something that, of course, the mentor don't have control over it, this sense of happiness. But happiness is important.
it's what people's advice for parents is, no? You give them wings to fly, and the rest, the rest is up to them. When they crash, you're there to pick up the pieces. Justin just asked a question in the chat, which I replied and said, we are all awesome in metabolomics and lipidomics. That's why it's different to be mentor in metabolomics.
Wonderful. Yes, is that I'll ask, there's I think we have time for one more question from the audience. And this one is quite interesting. This is a wish list for mentors. What would the panelists appreciate and not appreciate about their mentee? What is their ideal mentee? And I love this word. Where can you get a form of symbiosis from your mentees?
Oh my God.
Does anyone have a wish list?
Mine is the one I mentioned before. I want a clear ask. I want them to do their homework. I want them to follow up and to keep checking in and to, yeah. And that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as what Ian said earlier too about communication, it's a two-way thing, you know. I want to hear from them and what do they need, and yeah, that is the key thing, communication for sure, both ways.
And don't be late, right? Don't be late. If you schedule time and they're late, that's really uncool.
Expect that and you with your mentor, I suppose.
Yeah.
Coffee helps. Coffee's quite good. That usually helps with meetings. Biscuits as well, quite partially odd cookie kind of works. So all very nice. Usually get me more focused if I'm going to contribute a bit better.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just in time for Christmas to get your wish list in for your mentees. But yes, thank you. That has been a really insightful discussion, especially on like all these different perspectives from mentee, mentorship, academia, diversity, and just it's a really, as Ian like to say, a challenge, and we're very grateful for people like you guys who take on mentees, who mentor and build these relationships. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on and discussing. Alice, would you like to wrap things up?
Yep. I would just maybe like to add again a big thank you to all of you to making time and your valuable time to share your insights with us. And this will be also uploaded on YouTube, so people can come back and can listen to it again, or maybe those who couldn't catch up, then they can then see all the discussions we had. I think it was very interesting and thought-provoking. So thank you so much. And I would just like to wrap this up. And thank you everyone for being here and giving your insights. And yeah, have a nice day. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to add something else, I would just maybe the slight advertising is a little bit under the table. It's not like information that would be open right now, but we might be planning a workshop for the next conference for the Metabolomics in Osaka for mentoring, also from the EMN. So where we maybe can also use this insight from these discussions and make it a little bit broader, but this is a little bit unofficial information. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you for
you.
the invitation.
Good day.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.